Hello, everyone. Welcome to our weekly Alianza Youth Talks. In today's conversation, we will discuss race in the Latin and Hispanic community. Speaking here today is Ashley High.
Miguel Urrego.
Lina Orrego. So anybody who lives in the United States knows that race and ethnicity have a big impact when you live here. It's a relevant topic of conversation on the news or like just in general, like in everyday life. It's something that you're constantly thinking about.
But yeah,
But
so
before
I would like to get to like the difference between the two terms because it is something very different that a lot of people tend to mix up and confuse. So first of all, ethnicity refers to a group of people that come from a specific region and where they share the same nationality, heritage, in some cases religions, and also customs and languages. Instead, on the other hand, race refers to a group of people that can be placed together due to their unique physical appearances or features.
from like the immigrant perspective living in America, we can say that because of this difference, like these categories, it is already hard for most of us to live in this community, I guess. First of all, just like trying to fit in, making our life here and being accustomed to like the American lifestyle. But also, a lot of us have anecdotes and stories of times that we have specifically been mistreated or have faced violence or like aggressions from like others outside our own community.
Okay.
Personally, I've experienced a lot of verbal hatred, especially in the supermarkets.
In what way?
So, for example, I had asked my parents if I could go get a snack.
Yeah.
And they're like, sure, go. And they're like, and like 2 aisles down. So I ran. They're like, because we had to go. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go run for my snack. I went over. I was minding my business and everything. And then there was these two other ladies in the aisle, but they were like fairly distanced from me. So I was confused as to why this white woman was just staring at me really angrily. And I was like, okay. So I grabbed my Cheetos. And as I was looking at the prices and stuff, and I grabbed it, and I was about to go, I hear her start saying like these really racial, like slurs to me, and I'm just like, okay. I proceed and just walk away. I was not gonna deal with some lady who looked like she was in her late 40s, who was really angry at a 17-year-old girl getting Cheetos.
What's your problem, ma'am?
So I've lived in two places. I've lived in Charlotte, and I used to live in a small town near the Raleigh area, which was on the countryside. And I can personally see the drastic change in between like the way people treat me. I feel like here in Charlotte, like yeah, I've had like encounters with people where they like look at me in a certain way or make like small comments that shouldn't be made in the first place. But I feel like when I used to live in this other town, it was like way worse. And my family and I had actually gotten used to it. Like we'll go places and like we'll be like the only Hispanic family. And like people would like stare at us or they will like automatically assume we didn't speak Spanish and be like, do you need help? English, and be like, do you need help with anything? And like just things like that. And also in schools, like with the teachers and everything, like the majority of the teachers there were white, and like there was a lot of like biased from certain teachers with their Hispanic students. Like they would kind of act like like we're like another group, and like it was my mom's responsibility since she was like the ESL teacher. So it was very difficult. And like I guess it's like what like shocks me the most is like when people assume things that are not real. Like once me and my cousins went into a store, another store anecdote, like Ashley said, and we were looking for the bathroom, and we were walking around the store like minding our own business. We were like, oh, where's the bathroom? And we were speaking in Spanish. And then I started noticing one of the workers started like following us like all over the place, and like literally like a cartoon version. She would like stick her head out like from the top corner of the door, like. And I was kind of like, okay, what is this lady doing? And I was like, oh, I bet she thinks we're trying to like steal something. And then she kind of like, not like, like straight up, but she kind of like blocked us from the aisle where we were walking. She's like, do you guys need anything? And I was like, no, we're just looking for the bathroom. She's like, okay, follow me, it's right here. And she was kind of like serious about it. So I don't know, like it's things like that leave me kind of like
what we want to call microaggressions, where people like they're saying these subtle things, like they're underlining it with like certain like meanings, and then when you confront them about it, they're like, I didn't say anything. But like the way they're saying it, the way they're acting towards you, it's just like, it's those situations where you know what you're feeling, and then you tell somebody else and they're like, they're probably just,
they're just doing their job.
They're just doing their job. And it's like, well, the way I felt it didn't say that necessarily. And I've personally had like similar situations like that as well. Where like, well, we were both raised in a small town, and then we moved to the city. And in that school, it was predominantly white. I was one of the few like Hispanic students in like the whole grade. So I had a lot of girls come up to me and be like, oh, you're not that pretty, your hair is black, you're supposed to be blonde, you're supposed to have blue eyes. I had a really thick unibrow. I had like, that little kid unibrow and mustache that you can't get rid of until like middle school. That was me. So they'd always be like, ew, why do you have a mustache? That's for boys. That unibrow, that's for boys. Like, and like shows always show like unibrows and stuff being like the ugly duckling in the group. I mean, so I guess that, I don't want to say racism, but like lack of education was that. And then when I got older in like 4th grade, people would be like, but you're Hispanic, you're not supposed to do that, or you're Hispanic, you're not supposed to be smart like that, like straight up to my face. And I'd be like,
oh, I didn't know you were smart.
Yeah, like I didn't know you were smart. Why? Well, because you're you. And it's like, okay, well, what's that supposed to mean? So like in situations like that, usually like I want to, personally, I don't like to freak out and start like an altercation with them, and I'll just ignore it. And if I have the chance, I'll actually tell them like, well, that's wrong. And I try to like prove them wrong and say like all these things that I know for a fact are true about me and like my community. And I try to dismantle that thought that they have. But sometimes when it's people that are so hard-headed, I don't get into that argument, because personally it's not worth it. And I know I'm living my truth, and they're just bitter about it. Like, what about y'all? Like, how do y'all handle those types of situations?
Depending on who is approaching me in a very negative way, I will either ignore it or try to educate them. But if there's no point in trying, just walk away, ignore it. Because at the end of the day, it's just a person who just is so bitter and does not want to learn.
They don't want to
learn. Don't take it personal either. It's just they don't see it the way it's supposed to be seen.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, I feel like personally, like, when these things happen, I never really said anything, and like I kind of feel bad about that. But at the same time, it's not like I will like start a conversation, because of how you have said like I don't really think it's like worth it to like waste my time on a person who's like so like enclosed to their own like
entitled to their own beliefs.
Mm-hmm. So I rather like especially since like things like this have sometimes happened in school, I rather give it time and demonstrate that no, I am not what you think I am, and I'm actually like a studious person. I'm smart. I'm like I'm many other things than from like the negative perception you have of me. Mm-hmm. So that's what I personally believe.
Yes. I wanted to drag the conversation a little over to the racism or discrimination that we may see inside our own Latin community, because we are a large community, and Hispanic is like the
ethnicity. It's not a race.
It's not a race, which is like a common misconception. And inside our community, we have a lot of different ethnicities. We have a lot of, like, for example, in Peru, you can talk a little bit about that, like.
There's a lot of Asian Peruvians,
for example.
I am one. I don't really see anything other than that, or just Peruvians or Afro-Peruvians. There are those too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, like in Colombia, we have a lot of For example, like Middle Eastern communities. For example, like Shakira, like she's a Middle Eastern. Like just to point that out, and many others that internationally are not known about. We have a lot of Afro-Colombians, and a lot of like Afro culture actually makes part of what the world sees as Colombian culture, not knowing where it comes from. And overall, like there's like I'm pretty sure every country has their own like people from all over the world, so you can't really enclose Hispanic the term into like one race, or like think that a Hispanic person is going to look a certain way.
Yes. So on that note, do you guys, because personally I see racism from like white Hispanics to like Afro Hispanics or Afro Latinos,
Or like even indigenous communities.
or indigenous communities, because I think we have this perception that grows inside our own like native countries, like in Latin and Central America. I feel like there's this image that like the Eurocentric beauty, and
It's the correct.
it's like the correct and like high way to go. Like that's like what's in, and that's perfect and it's valuable.
So basically in Latin America, what we always see in our countries is the like more like appeal towards light people with lighter complexities and with aerocentric features, which is a big problem because it's seen through TV, it's seen through like the pop media, the pop world, and it is very important to like change this because our community consists of many people, how we said, of different backgrounds, whether it's Afro-Latinos, people of indigenous communities, and many other people of color. And so as a community, I feel like we need to learn to appreciate each other first and grow and build on each other on the positive things in order to be able to like succeed. For example, here in a country where we're seen as immigrants. So that's what I believe.
Also, it's important to point out that even though many times we are victims to like these harassing situations, it's important to have a self-analysis and look at ourselves and be honest and think if we're making part of these types of actions. Because we can say like, oh, I'm from Gen Z, like we're all Gen Z, we make part of this generation that's like open to like a lot of communities, open to like, you know, accepting a lot of differences that are just natural in the world. Yet many times we may be part of the issue and we don't want to correct ourselves because like we don't want to be honest with the fact that we may have I guess like racist or discriminatory tendencies. So I want to like encourage everybody who's watching us to have a self-analysis and think about like yourself. If you ever like refer to like a group of people in a derogatory form,
Like comedic way.
in a
like
comedic
joke
way,
or
like
something.
like you wouldn't like someone to talk about your community or yourself in those ways because you would be offended because people will say like,
It's
oh,
just a joke.
it's
It's
just a
dark
joke.
humor.
It's dark humor.
No. It's
But
just
like
racism.
when it's you, that's when you're like, well, I don't like how you're talking about me. I don't like how you're referring to me. And that's how the people that you're referring to, obviously not everybody does it, but there are small things that like you should have in mind. Like other people will feel offended and it's just it's not okay. It's not a good thing to do. You're not being a good citizen or a good human when you're doing those things. So yeah, that was something I want to put out there.
Well, thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this session of Youth Talks. Stay tuned for our next topic. We will talk about drugs in the Latinx community.
Yes. Thank you.